Welcome to this video. Today, we will try and understand the process of SSB from the point of view of a candidate. Most videos on the internet go into unnecessary details of information about the SSB, which only confuse the candidate and do not help him in any way in getting recommended. To do well at the SSB, the first thing that one needs to do is to understand the process of SSB so that one can go fully prepared. Watch this video to the end to make sure that you understand the process fully. SSB has three different testing techniques, which are further subdivided into a number of tests or tasks that a candidate has to undergo. These include the personal interview, the psychological test, and the group test. Each of these three techniques assess a candidate independently, and at the end of the process, a pen picture or a personality profile of a candidate is created by integrating the results of all three. Based on this result, a final decision on whether to recommend or not to recommend the candidate is arrived at. One question that every candidate has in his mind is, what is it that is checked by the assessors at the SSB? In this video, we will try to look at the qualities that a candidate must possess in order to clear the SSB, and also try to understand the entire procedure of the SSB. These qualities are called officer-like qualities or OLQs. There are 15 OLQs which each assessor checks and rates a candidate on. While you must have heard about OLQs, but as a candidate, trying to understand or trying to remember the definitions of each of these OLQs will just be a waste of time and effort. What you instead need to focus on is how to develop your personality or how to bring out your personality in such a way that the assessor is able to see your officer-like qualities and selects you. There is no magic potion that anyone can make you drink during coaching which will bring out these qualities in your personality. All these qualities already exist in all of us in different measures, and what we need to do is to show these qualities to the assessors. Many candidates who come for the SSB are either too shy, which results in these qualities not emerging, or are poorly coached, which results in them trying to behave in an unnatural way. Please remember that your assessors at the SSB are either highly trained army officers or scientists in the field of psychology. So if you try to put up a show, the assessors will catch you and you might not get recommended. Your aim should be to present your best natural self at the SSB. The best way to try and understand these qualities is to firstly understand what is the requirement of the armed forces from an officer. An officer is a leader of troops who is required to plan, organize, initiate action and execute these plans in the most adverse of situations imaginable. While he is a soldier, he is also a gentleman who is as comfortable dining with his troops sitting on the floor as he is in breaking bread at a king's palace. He is a team man, who always gives higher priority to the achievement of his team's objectives over his own priorities, even at the cost of his life. Not only does he know how to do a task himself, but also how to get it done from his subordinates, by achieving their wholehearted cooperation and admiration. By now it would be clear to you that an officer needs to have a sharp brain in order to be able to plan his missions and organize resources. To be a good team man, and to lead men into battle, he needs to have the highest level of social qualities so that his men respond to him in every situation. He needs to be someone who initiates action in order to solve a problem and not keep waiting for instructions. He needs to be cheerful, buoyant and stay determined even in the most extreme situations. In order to complete physically demanding tasks, he needs to be physically and mentally fit. Now, let us look at how the SSB tries to assess whether a candidate has all of these qualities or not. The three different techniques as mentioned earlier look at the Manasa, Vacha and Karmana aspects of an individual's personality. Manasa stands for mind, which is assessed by the psychologist. Vacha stands for words, which is assessed by the interviewing officer, and Karmana stands for action, which is assessed by the GTO. The SSB happens in two stages, which is Stage 1, or the screening test, and Stage 2, which includes psychology interview and group tests. Let us first look at what happens in the Stage 1. Screening test or Stage 1. The procedure at SSB starts with the screening test on day 1. The screening test has two components, the intelligence tests and the picture perception and description test, or the PP and DT. Candidates tend to give importance only to the PP and DT while mostly ignoring the intelligence tests, which is not right. The intelligence tests are extremely important, and based on the performance in the intelligence test, each candidate is assigned an OI rating or the OIR. It is very important to get a good OIR in order to clear the screening test. Without going into too much details about the numbering system of OIR, it is enough for you to understand that you can improve your OIR by practicing. The next step is the PP and DT, in which a picture is shown to the candidates, based on which they are required to write a story. Thereafter, the candidates are divided into groups of 15 to 16, and then in these groups, each candidate is required to narrate the story that he has written in about 1 minute. Once all the candidates have narrated their story, the group is required to discuss amongst themselves, and arrive at a common conclusion to the story. Here, one of the group members who is chosen by the group is required to stand up and give out the final conclusion. Based on the individual performance of each candidate in the PP and DT, and combining it with his OIR, it is decided whether the candidate can be retained for the remaining process of the SSB or not. Only the candidates who clear the screening undergo the stage 2, while the rest of them are sent back on the first day itself. Coming on to the stage 2, it starts on the second day of the SSB, which is the day after the screening test, during which the candidates undergo the psychological tests. On day 3 and 4, the candidates undergo the GTO tasks as well as the personal interview, and on the 5th day, which is the last day of the SSB, the board conference is held, after which the final results of the SSB are announced. The candidates who get recommended are required to stay back at the SSB to undergo the medical examination, which may take another 2 to 3 days. Now, a little about the individual techniques. Manasa, the psychologist at the SSB, uses 3 different tests to assess the personality of a candidate. The first test is called the TAT, or the Thematic Apperception Test, in which a series of 11 pictures are shown to the candidates for 30 seconds each, based on which they are required to write down stories in about 4 minutes for every picture. This test is based on the projection technique, in which, while looking at a visual stimulus, we try to assume the role of the central character in the story and get emotionally involved. For example, when we are watching a movie and if something bad happens to the hero, we feel the emotional pain as if it was happening to us. The pictures that are shown during this test are vague in nature, in order to bring out the original thoughts and perception of the candidate. At the end of these 11 pictures, a blank slide is shown, based on which a candidate is again required to write a story. Apart from this, a candidate is also required to write his self-description, bringing out details about his own self, including some details about his education and family background. The next test in the psychological series is the situation reaction test, in which 60 situations are given to the candidate, to which he is supposed to respond in a booklet in 30 minutes. And the last test is called the word association test, or the WOT, in which a series of words are given on a screen, based on which a candidate is required to write sentences on a sheet of paper. Based on the quality and the consistency of responses of candidate, the psychologist finds out whether the candidate has the required qualities or not. Vacha. The next technique is the personal interview, in which an interviewing officer, who is a senior officer from the armed forces, interviews each candidate individually for 35 to 45 minutes. The interviewing officer assesses the candidate, based on his responses to the questions that he asks. These questions range from family background of the candidate, his educational background, any special achievements, his friends, school teachers, relatives, siblings, general knowledge, etc. The interviewing officer also asks tough questions related to everyday situations that any one of us can come across, trying to find out how the candidate would respond to such situations in real life. The interviewing officer is likely to ask these questions during various stages of the interview, based on the responses of the candidate to various questions asked by him. Depending on his background, a candidate is expected to have sufficient knowledge related to his own area of expertise, area of work and education, and his areas of interest and hobbies. Since the candidate wants to join the armed forces, he is also expected to have decent knowledge of how the armed forces function. Karmana. The third technique is called the group testing technique, in which a group testing officer divides the total number of candidates into smaller groups of 6 to 10 candidates, and makes them undergo certain tasks together as a group, initially, and then individually. These tasks range from group discussion and lecturette, which require communication skills, analytical ability, confidence and general awareness, to group planning and other group tasks, which require practical problem-solving skills, and obstacle crossing tests, like the group obstacle race and individual obstacles, which require a good level of physical fitness, teamwork and planning. In this extensive outdoor testing, the candidates are grilled for over 8 to 10 hours in 2 days, in which the GTO looks at the performance of a candidate in a group, as well as his performance as an individual. These 2 days of grueling testing are sufficient for the GTO to reasonably arrive at an assessment about the candidate's personality. By now, you would have realized that at the SSB, the psychologist is using the Manasa technique to assess the same 15 OLQs that the interviewing officer is assessing with the help of Vacha, and the GTO with the help of Karmana. On the last day of the SSB, in the conference, all three of them collated their thoughts and assessment of each candidate to arrive at the decision of recommending him or her. Ladies and gentlemen, the SSB is a thorough and extensive process of selecting the brightest and the best people for the most honorable profession in our country, which is the armed forces. The first thing that the assessors at SSB expect from a candidate is honesty, since honesty is the bedrock of the armed forces. So, any candidate who tries to present a false identity that he has acquired from coaching or any other method is not likely to succeed. So, prepare well, and when you go for your SSB, be your best natural self, and nobody can stop you from succeeding. We are putting in a lot of hard work in putting these videos together for the benefit of the candidates who want to join the armed forces. Don't forget to give us a like and share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel, and press the bell icon to get updates on our upcoming videos first. Thank you. Jai Hind.